Okay, good evening everyone, and thank you for coming. Can I just check, are there any people here who are fairly new to Buddhism, fairly new to meditation? Okay, good. So, this is the first of 5 evenings that we're going to spend together, hopefully. And the topic of the 5 evenings is mindfulness meditation. And so I'm going to focus to a large degree on that particular topic. The word mindfulness is something that has been picked up by psychologists in recent times, and it's become like the buzzword in psychology, and they like to strip mindfulness away from Buddhism and use it as a therapeutic tool that they train people in using mindfulness. Meditation, but mindfulness is not just sitting meditation, it's an approach to experience. They've also been using mindfulness to train the therapists, so that if you are a therapist, you can practice this mindful awareness and presence while you're doing or giving therapy to people. And this is a way to improve or help the therapists and give them something to hold on to while they're doing the therapy. So it's becoming something fairly secular these days. And secular means separated from the religious side. The research into mindfulness now is quite clear. There are a lot of problems that people can have that are really improved or changed by practicing mindfulness during the illness, or most especially during the recovery. There is some question how much of this is placebo effect. And doctors tend to discount placebo as something that is not real. And they want to focus on medicine. They want to see which chemicals will have what effects in your body. However, the placebo is an interesting topic and idea, because there are ways and techniques that you can amplify the placebo effect. And so quite possibly mindfulness is helping in that scope to amplify the positive thinking, the acceptance, and the willingness to heal that is necessary for a placebo to work. You all know what I mean by placebo, right? Okay. Anybody not know the word placebo? Okay. So placebo effect is very interesting. The research shows that if you give somebody 2 placebo pills, they work better than 1 placebo pill. If you give somebody a red placebo pill, it works differently to a blue placebo pill. Red placebos will pick you up and liven you up, and blue pills are good for reducing pain or calming you down. Unless you are Italian. And blue pills seem to work to pick up Italian men, not so much for the women. Interesting. I love good science, right? Good science is not trying to really explain things. Good science is trying to discover things. So this was the findings. The explanation or the supposition is that the association with colours is different for Italians because their football team wears blue, and that's why blue placebo pills pick them up and get them more excited. A placebo operation works better than a placebo pill. So if you can convince somebody they've had an operation, that also will work tremendously in your healing. And they do this in Thailand with these doctors. And you sit in front of the doctor and tell them your problem. And he has a little scalpel. And he does this with a little scalpel. And you sit there like, and then after half an hour he said, right, I've finished now. I've done the operation on your eye or your leg or whatever. And people go away and report that they have been healed by this psychic surgery. What do you think? Would it work for you? I went to this, I was watching him and I said to him, sometimes I get asthma. I said, can you do something about that? He said, well, stay away from vinegar. That was it. That was my only, and I stayed away from vinegar. It didn't do any good. And I'm English. I really like vinegar. You know. So the effects of mindfulness, whether they are purely mental, like a placebo, or not. There's another interesting one with placebos. Placebos work even if you're told they're placebos. And there was some research done on this. And people were taking medication. And if you take a placebo pill with real medication, the placebo will have the effect of that medication. So you can target placebos. And what they did was they told patients that 1 in 4 of the pills that they took would be a placebo. And it turned out that those 1 in 4 pills, placebo pills, had the exact same effect as the real medicine. Now sometimes, if you're on a course of medicine, that costs $25,000 for a chemotherapy course, for instance. If you can reduce that bill by 25% and still have the effect, that's quite significant. Unfortunately, the medical profession is not happy with giving out placebos instead of real medicines. All of this shows that there is a tremendous healing power in the mind. And this can be amplified by the use of mindfulness. So, for example, one of the research projects done on this was with, I get them mixed up, cirrhosis and psoriasis. Psoriasis of the skin, that's right? Cirrhosis of the liver. Psoriasis. I'm hoping I've said it right? That's good pronunciation. And in extreme circumstances, if you have this skin disease, it can be treated by very strong ultraviolet light. The light can also cause some damage, so there's quite a long healing phase to this. But this research into it showed that if you are practicing mindfulness while you have this treatment, the recovery phase is 4 times shorter. So there is some genuine research and reasoning to separate mindfulness from the religious side of things and use it purely in a therapeutic aspect. And this will hopefully, not always, but hopefully will improve your patience, improve your self-understanding. If you know psychology, it will lead you towards self-actualization, which is an evening out of the character, if I can put it that way. However, The practice of mindfulness was brought up or brought about by Buddhism and seems to be fairly unique to Buddhism in ancient traditions. There are other traditions that have things very close. For example, Saint Teresa of Avila had this process that she called recollection, which seems to be very, very similar to mindfulness. But it is a quality that is particularly relevant to Buddhism, and is something that Buddhism, one of many qualities that Buddhism mentions as a good quality to develop. But for the start of these 5 weeks, I want to talk about mindfulness in its original context, and we'll get on to what exactly mindfulness is, and I'm going to give you all homework that you have to do every day, and we'll get you to report. Do you do that here? I can never get people in Bangkok to do that. One time I had this online form and you had to go and click and say that, and there's nobody did it. And then at the end of the course you see that you're supposed to get a certificate, and I didn't print any certificates. Nobody filled out their forms, you see. The original context then is saints and sages have existed around the world in every tradition, in every culture, as far back as we can look. Probably our oldest records are about 5,000 years and go back to the Indus Valley civilization. And there we see these yogis sitting in a cross-legged posture, and very often with headdresses that come from animals. And probably the people were leaving the cities and towns, which were very new to the world and civilization at that time, and practicing these various ascetic practices in order to gain supernormal powers, or at least to convince people that they have supernormal powers. But every culture throughout the ages has had a number of people who have been mystics. And by mystics comes from this word mythos, or going into the mystery. So it's those people who are looking for something that's very deep, very mysterious, very difficult to fathom, very hard to think about. And ancient cultures talk about mythos and logos. So logos is where we get logic, mythos is where we get mystery. And this in the Kabbalah was the intellect and the imagination. I read about one of these hermits, and he was in a cave in Romania, and he separated himself from the society and went to live in this cave for the pursuit of that spiritual knowledge, that spiritual enlightenment that one needs to withdraw somewhat from society and engage in the practice for. And not many people had really ever seen this hermit or interacted with him. He kept himself to himself and lived in his cave in Romania. But the reason that we were reading about him was he got into the newspapers, international newspapers, because one day he went down from the cave to the village and filed a police report that his cave had been robbed, and he'd lost his laptop, his computer and his printer. So modern day mystics, I like that. I like my computer too. So what is it that people are retreating or withdrawing from the society to go in search of? And this is what we call, in Buddhism, we call enlightenment. In Indian traditions, it's called moksha, or other words, vibhuti, vimoksha, a whole number of words. In Judaic traditions, it's usually called union with God. Are these all the same thing? Difficult to say, really. You'd have to go and complete each one of these things and then come back and say if it's the same thing. But it seems to be this, that there is some kind of spiritual goal, some ultimate attainment of human beings or of consciousness. That is above the ordinary, that is very starkly different to anything else that you can attain to in the world. So this is the idea that there is this thing called enlightenment. And this is what saints and sages go off in pursuit of. We don't know exactly what it is. So in the mystic traditions, of all the traditions, all the mystic traditions from Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, in all of these traditions, the mystics have this understanding that the ultimate goal is something that you don't know and you don't understand. So we're starting from a position of not knowing. And that's very different to the exoteric traditions. Exoteric traditions means traditions of spiritual teachings. And usually with the spiritual teachings, somebody has written down or recorded what the truth is. And they've then usually put it into a book and then told people, this is the truth, and your job is to believe it. And if you don't believe it, there's terrible punishments in store. But if you do believe it, then you're going to heaven. That's the usual format, right? No different in Buddhism. They know Buddhists also fall into this kind of trap. There seems to be something with human beings that we really desperately want other people to agree with us. Right? And I've always wondered what that is. I'm very careful to note with myself that when people disagree with me or say something that I don't like or don't agree with. I did this experiment in Thailand one time, and they have a cultural saying or belief that there are 4 things that should not run. If I can get all 4 of these. Kings, elephants, ladies and monks should not run. And so I was talking about this in my psychology class in the university. And I said, kings, turtles, ladies and monks. So I switched elephants for turtles, you see. And then I watched all these Thai people, and they all like wanting to interrupt me, like, no, you've got it wrong, that's not it. But they were all much too polite. So I kept mentioning this word turtles, and I could see the audience getting more and more agitated, which gave me more and more amusement. And then at the end of the class, I was actually talking about construct theory, which is part of psychology. But construct theory says that we have certain constructs or certain stories which are the way that we understand the world. And we have these expectations of how things should go. And we feel comfortable when things are following our expectations. We can switch off our conscious mind to some degree. We can rest easy because our unconscious mind has everything in place and it understands how things are going. When something breaks your constructs, you start to feel agitated, uncomfortable. So if there is a sound behind you or in the next room here, and you don't know what that sound is, you feel a little uncomfortable. You want to find out what that sound is, right? Then you go into that room and you find that it's a cat or something silly. It's not an alien, it's not something that's going to hurt you. Okay, it's a cat. Now you can feel at home with that thing being there. So we like to have things that we like the universe to go according to our expectations and our stories. So when it comes to religions, we have all the traditions put down a particular teaching. And then there is a pressure on people to conform their beliefs to that teaching. In my university, we also had one of our teachers was also a Thai lady, but she was teaching in the Netherlands, and she was teaching this particular class. And then I put my hand up and said, "Teacher, I completely disagree with you. I think you're wrong." And all the Thai monks in my classroom, "You don't do that." I knew this teacher, and I knew that she would be playing the game. She was like, "Great!" And she comes up, she sits on a desk in front of me like, "Tell me why I'm wrong." Because we wanted an interesting discussion. We wanted to bounce our ideas off each other. But all these Thai monks would go, "You're so rude, you're so rude, you can't do that." So, for the exoteric religious traditions, and other non-religious traditions, we have a kind of teaching or an accepted format, something that we believe and agree on and understand to be true. And that's our point of beginning. In the mystic traditions, we're starting from the other angle. We're starting from the idea that there is something there and I don't know what it is. And if I don't know what it is, then my beliefs and keys into that experience, they're all going to vary and be different. So then when the people from mystic traditions come together, very often we have a really good understanding and feeling for each other. I went to see one man, his name was, still is I think, Father Lawrence Freeman. Anyone heard of him? One or two people? He's a Christian meditator. There are such things. Teaches Christian meditation, basically mantra meditation all over the world. And so I went to a talk of his in Bangkok. It's just so nice, you know, I just understood everything that he was saying so clearly and nicely. And then afterwards he and I met for 5-10 minutes and had a discussion, and we're just like on the same page. Really nice to talk to people who are kind of engaging with the same mysteries, albeit from a different tradition. So this enlightenment is also called amata. Amata means deathless. Not quite the same as immortality. And immortality meaning that this body and this self and this psychology is going to last forever. And some people might want to last forever. I'm not one of them myself. You see the way the world comes and goes, it gets better, it gets worse. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be here forever. Right? It might get terribly boring. All of humanity dies and I'm stuck here because I've attained to immortality. You know, the earth is burning up because it's got too close to the sun, and I'm like, still here. And the fact that everything is changing and in flux actually is a source of comfort, because it means however bad things get, then it's not going to last forever. However good things might get, then because they're temporary, we can take that time to enjoy them and appreciate them. However, the teaching on the amata, it means that there is something that is deathless within the self. some core, you might call it a core spark or an element, and it is the attaining to this particular element, the spark, that is enlightenment. That you see that deathless part is actually your real nature. And certain people in the times past, Buddha being one of them, one of many, have hit upon this particular understanding and experience. And all of these people come back and they say that completely other than all the things in the world, there is this amata, or this thing that doesn't die. And touching upon that is the ultimate good, summum bonum. To some people this makes sense, to some people not so much. My father was one, not so much. I remember when I was young, I was travelling with my father, we had to deliver sweets to be packaged. He had a little chain of sweet shops. And as we were delivering these sweets, there was a man sitting in his front garden doing meditation, cross-legged, sitting there in meditation. I must have been about 14 at the time. And I was really interested in this. And I said to my father, "What's he doing?" And my father said, "He's wasting time." Not a great understanding of the mystic tradition. And so this thing, this enlightenment, is something, because it's deathless, it's something that doesn't arise and doesn't cease. So all the things that you can see in the world, or find or touch in the world, are things that arise and cease. Anything that you can see, anything that you can taste, anything that you can hear, anything that you can smell, anything that you can feel with the body, and any thought that you can think with the mind. This is called the six senses. In Buddhism, there's six senses. In psychology, we have about 9 or 15. I mean, there's different ways to look at it. But basically, it means that any experience that you can have is something that's just come up and is going to disappear in a minute. Now, it might seem like you live in a fairly consistent world. Vegemite is always pretty much the same. I'm very disappointed in Australia. I thought Vegemite came in like hand dispensers. It was everywhere in your society, and not so much. There's a lot of strange things I found in Australian society. But that is a construct. Vegemite is a construct that you hold in your mind. But the actual experience is of tasting it, and now my mind wanders away. That experience has disappeared, and a new experience has arisen. And if you think back to any experience that you've had, ever, good or bad, what's the best experience you've ever had, aside from Vegemite? I'm a Marmite man myself, but what's the best experience that you've ever had? That's something that you experience. 10 seconds before that experience, you weren't experiencing it. Half an hour after that experience, it was just gone. So, within the entire world, we can sum up the entire world and the entire universe as experiences that come up and disappear. And in Buddhism, that's called samsara. So, any kind of enlightenment that we can find is not going to be an experience. It might be something that you experience, but it must, by definition, be something that's constantly there. So this is why I say it's something within you, within your experience. You have this capacity for the deathless. However, if you listen to all the saints and sages and what they have written or spoken about this. What they say is this experience is the big reality, and you are the little spark that's popped up and is going to disappear. So we like to think of it as something within me, something that I have, but when you attain to it, you realize that this me, this personality, this body of experiences and this memory is actually just a blip that appears inside this greater picture. So, if this experience then, or this enlightenment, is not something that we can arouse or bring up or create or attain to, what is there that you can do? And this is the great problem for all the spiritual traditions. And many of the great teachers come up against this problem. You may have heard of names like Krishnamurti, Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta. There's some more other ones, a little more controversial. But they all come up against this problem that people go to these saints and sages and say, all right, if you really attain to this thing, what do I do to get to it? And their answer is always the same: there's nothing you can do. Because whatever you can do is creating another experience, right? That's all you know how to do. Doing stuff is creating an experience. Except maybe going to sleep, but even while you're sleeping, you're experiencing things. And so people say, okay, if there's nothing I can do, what do I do? I went to see one of these people. His name was Papaji. Anyone heard of Papaji? Pujaji? He was a very nice Indian man. And, you know, you can't tell if somebody's enlightened. You can't give them a little test. You know, these online tests that you can answer 15 questions and they'll tell you what country you come from and things like that. Do you speak in a funny accent? Do you eat Vegemite with Marmite? Like Australian. So you can't tell if somebody is enlightened or not enlightened. But, you know, you can listen to them and listen to their teachings and you can get some impression. So many people at this time around the world, they believed that this particular man was enlightened. I do myself. His teaching was very clear to me and very nice, pleasant. He has a nice sense of humour, which I liked. You know, being English, I like people with a sense of humour. And they had a centre for him, probably about this size, maybe slightly bigger. And every day they would go to his house and knock on his door and bring him out to the centre. And there he would read from a book for an hour or two. And it's just nice listening to him. He just had that lovely lilt, gentle way of speaking. And then he would answer questions. You'd write your question down and he would answer the question in English. And some people, when they go and sit in front of him, just get enlightened. Some people ask him just a question and he gives them a couple of words and then bingo. They say bingo, isn't it? And they get it. Now, at that time, to find these kind of people, you had to hear about it. You couldn't look them up online. You weren't quite sure where they were. I just heard that he was in India, in Lucknow somewhere. So I'd gone to South India to go and see a particular guru my friends used to go and see. But when I got there, he was in prison. So that didn't work out very well. So I hopped on a train and I knew that this guy was in Lucknow. And so I just went to Lucknow. I had no idea where it was. And the bags got stolen on the way. And I just asked around. I mean, I didn't know there's like 15 million people in Lucknow. I just asked around and eventually I found my way there. And I got there to the satsang hall and I came out and I thought, well, I'm on my way to Thailand to become a monk and to spend my life dedicated to the religious life in search of enlightenment, living as a renunciate monk in Thailand. I thought I'll just try on my way there to get the bingo, which is a lot faster and a lot easier than becoming a monk. No bingo for me, so I'm going the long way around now. One of the questions, quite funny, this lady wrote a question, and her question was, she sent this question up on a piece of paper. He finished reading from the book, and he picked up this piece of paper. Very slowly and very carefully, he opened it up with this beautiful warmth of humour. And then he read this question. Dear Papaji, I was walking in the forest behind the satsang halls a few days ago, and I got lost. And I wandered around for a few hours, and then I came across a temple, abandoned in the wilderness. And I went and I sat in that temple. And as I sat there in meditation, this incredible dancing light appeared in front of me. And it was Krishna himself. And he gave me this spiritual teaching by dance. And I understood every movement, and I understood it all so clearly. And then he disappeared, and for several hours I was in this incredible ecstasy. And then slowly that started to come back to this world. And I realized if I stayed here much longer, I might be in danger, and I should return to my house. Oh Papaji, what does this mean? He folds a piece of paper up like this, very slowly, very carefully, and puts it down. He says, next time Krishna comes and appears in front of you, can you ask him to come and see me, because we haven't met yet. That was it, that was the end of the answer. And I saw this a lot actually with him, because people were going with a lot of projections. You know, they want him to be this great guru, they want to have a personal contact with him, they want to have a personal teaching from him. And every time he's trying to just kind of bring people back to reality. Anyway, I didn't get the bingo, I didn't get enlightened, and so I came to Thailand and I ordained as a monk. This was 20 years ago. And ordaining as a monk, you see, in the Buddhist tradition, we have this very clear teaching from the Buddha, and this very clear training as a monk. And this is something that I didn't find with all these other spiritual traditions. So I went and ordained with my teacher, who is the most ideal man that I've ever met in my life. Hardworking, generous, a lot of meditation attainments, immense charisma, somebody that I would really look up to as a human role model. And so this teaching and this vinaya, this training that we have, is very clear. Whereas the various other gurus and teachers that were around at that time, or that you can access in these books here, kept coming up against this problem that this amata, or deathless thing that can be attained to, is not an experience. So it's not something that you do. And for human beings, we're always looking for something that we can do, right? You want to basically be like yourself, but with a little bit added on, right? You basically want to be like you are, but with just a bit more enlightenment, right? A bit fewer problems, a bit less stress. And I found this I do some talks for a business group sometimes. And this group said to me, these are all high-powered businessmen, they're all CEOs, you have to own your own company, have to have more than $8 million a year turnover, and you have to employ more than 200 members of staff, and you have to be under 40, interesting. And they said to me, you know, we have money, we're all experts in our fields, we want to get the best teacher to give us the shortest teaching, and the sharpest teaching in the shortest amount of time that will give us the most benefit. No messing around with us, we want the thing. And I said, why? So you can get back to work. And people have this idea that really, I don't want to become enlightened, I just want to be like me, but have a magic button that's going to remove like the bad bits, right? Remove the stressful parts of my character. Press this button and be a bit kinder, be a bit more charismatic maybe. What is it that you would like to add? So adding things by experience, gaining a new experience. And these days people like to do that and like to collect these things. And usually what you do is a course, right? It's where in Bangkok, when I put the word course in the advertising, like lots of people turned up. You know, nobody wants really, you know, renunciation and things like that, but a course, you know, to get a course, that means now I can do this as well as the other things. The process that we engage in then is not really one of adding in a new experience or making a new attainment. It's not one of meditating and getting this bingo, getting a light that appears. It's not about Krishna coming and appearing in front of you and giving you a dance. Because that also is an experience. Something that's come up, it's wowed you for a little while, and then it's gone. And there isn't any experience you can have that will stay with you for very long. And every experience quickly becomes boring. And then you want a different experience, or a better version of that experience. Right? First time I ate Marmite was just like incredible. I was 21 years old, and like 21 years wasted not eating this incredible stuff. And then you have it every day, and like, you know, you get bored of it. So any experience that you have, including in meditation, you can have these beautiful meditation experiences. But they're also something that's just popped up into your experience and is going to fizzle out. So the way that the meditation works, the way that mindfulness aims to work, is by giving you a different way in which you can relate to every single experience that you have. Good experiences and bad experiences. Neutral experiences, new experiences, old experiences. There's a different way that you can relate to your entire being. As we relate to ourselves in a new and a different way, things start to change. And we call this the way of wisdom. Because if you were to write down a list of things and decide the way that you want to be, how would you like to be? Would you like to be a bit more compassionate? Probably. Are you compassionate enough? Well, I feed the cat. You know, I save the dog from starvation every day, and you know, keep the goldfish alive. I'm compassionate. But we could all do with some more compassion. We could add a little bit on. You could probably do with, what else would you like to improve in? Kindness? Would you like to improve in patience? Be a more patient person. Patience is very primary. You can't do something to become more patient. You can only start practicing patience. So, if you were to write down a list of the things that you want qualities that you want to improve in and add on to yourself, that's going to be rather difficult, because it's you yourself that is coming up with these qualities. The ego is sitting there basically thinking, how can I be a bigger and better ego? And what the ego creates is going to be another ego. And you've got this trouble that when you get to it, you're not going to be happy there either, right? Because it's just another experience. And any experience that you have quickly becomes old, you quickly become accustomed to it, and you quickly start looking for a new experience to replace it. So we need some kind of mechanism that is going to bring about the changes that you yourself would find very difficult to bring about. And so this mechanism that we use is wisdom, or panya. And wisdom is the thing that will do the job. That's the thing that will change you. Your job is to arouse that wisdom. And out of all of the qualities in your experience that you can generate, there is one key quality that is especially effective at bringing about this wisdom. And that wisdom will change you in ways that you can't change yourself. Probably change you in ways that you didn't even think of changing. So, out of all of our experience as human beings, there is this one key quality, and that is the quality of your own awareness. Now, most of the time, you are not aware of your own awareness. You are caught up in something that you are doing. You are in an activity of some kind. So, for example, you get into a car and you issue, the CEO in the mind issues the instruction, drive to Melbourne. And then your hands start working, your feet start working, your car starts going, and meanwhile you get lost in thought doing something else. Right? Have you had this experience? It's actually called highway hypnosis. There's a name for it. And I had this in England. In England there are two roads basically that go up either coast, and there's what we call a mountain range in between it. You would probably call it like a hill, but to us it's a mountain range down the middle. And two roads, and I got myself onto the road from London, and I lived in Manchester, which is on the west side. So I want to come up and come over here on this side of the country. And so I get on the motorway and I point the car in the right direction and I say, take me to Manchester. And then I wander off, dreaming about this and that. And then the next time I can look around, Sheffield, 5 miles. Like I'd gone up the wrong side of the country. How is that possible? I've been indicating, turning left, turning right, changing lanes, giving ways. Absolutely no awareness of what was going on. So, the way that the mind works, I'm coming into the last 5 minutes, and this point is key to the whole story. The way that the mind works is most of your activity, most of your life is handled by your subconscious. Actually, subconscious or unconscious. That's slightly different, but doesn't concern us right now. And so it is the unconscious that is driving the car. What is the conscious mind doing? The conscious mind is off thinking about something else. And you can be doing any activity. You can be walking down the street, you point your body in the right direction, take me to Buddhist library, off you go walking, and your mind wanders away, your attention wanders away. You can't do that in Bangkok. If you've walked in Bangkok, you know there are so many pitfalls and crooked pavements and holes and wires and mad motorcyclists and taxis trying to mow you down on the pavement, and that you can't do that. You have to look at your feet. And it becomes disconcerting when you come from Bangkok to another place and you just, you keep looking at your feet, and it takes you a few days to realize, I can just leave my feet to walk because it's a civilized country. Taxi drivers aren't going to try and mow me down. You're all really good, when a pedestrian comes up to cross the road, you guys stop and let the pedestrian pass. It's really amazing. First few days when I get here, I keep seeing the Australians stop, and I keep running across the road. I'm thinking that you just misjudged your brakes or something, and you're going to, I'll go while I can go. And all these people are waiting for me to cross. It's really beautiful. Funny things. Another thing is in Thailand, when monks walk, people clear out of the way, and especially women, because women don't want to touch monks. Actually, there's no rule that women shouldn't touch monks. There's a rule that monks shouldn't touch women. It's not the same thing. But in Thailand, so especially the women will clear out of my way, but the men also. So I get used to walking through throngs of people and parting the Red Sea. Everybody parts on either side of me, and I can go. You just get used to it. And then walking around here with all these rude Australians bumping into me. What are they doing? It takes me a few days to realise I have to get out of other people's ways as well. So the important part is that where is your conscious attention? Because your conscious attention is very, very, very small. And it's only aware of one thing at a time. Now I know it feels like you have all these things going on and you're doing all of these things. It feels like I walked to the train station. You didn't, your unconscious walked to the train station. The feeling of consciousness, the feeling of your own awareness, that is only with one thing at a time. And it's the conscious attention that creates experience. So wherever you have experience, your conscious attention is there. Conscious awareness is there. However, you will be lost or caught up in your activity. And human beings do not like to be conscious of themselves. They like to be caught up in an activity and something that they do. Take, for example, computer games. I'm sure you don't play computer games, but your children might, right? In the temple we have these temple boys, and they come and live in the temple, and they do odd jobs and cleaning and things like that. And the monks sponsor them through university. So they come to go to school, usually from up country, and they don't have funds or places to stay, so they come into the temple. And then just one day I was staying in a temple that I wasn't really supposed to be at, so I asked the temple boy to go and get me my lunch. And he's there playing a computer game. He's like this. And I said, can you go and get me my lunch? He's like, yeah. Like this. So, we have to eat before midday. So at 11:15 I go back, I'm like, you got my lunch yet? Yeah, in a minute. So I go back 11:30 and he's like, yeah, I'm on it. 11:45, I'm starting to get panicky now. I got 15 minutes for my meal. I'm getting panicky, and I'm like, where's my lunch? He's like, yeah, I'm doing it. And then I turn the computer screen off, and he's like, oh. He's like looking around, blinking around, like remembering where he is in this room. He went to get my lunch and he came back and I was on his computer. So what is he doing? While he's playing the computer game, part of his attention is absorbed in his action. And that moment when I turned off the screen, his attention returns to himself. He gets this like blinking attention, like, oh yeah, I'm here, I'm aware, I'm conscious, I'm a human being, what do I have to do? Launch into a new activity, which was to go and get my lunch. And your entire day is formed in that way. You have actions that you get absorbed in, and you like to be absorbed, and you don't like to be aware of yourself. When you're aware of yourself, you start to feel a bit uncomfortable. Think of the movies, when you go and see movies. I don't know what's playing now. What was it, Star Wars? Have you seen it now? I don't know what sound, I don't really follow movies very much. What is the difference between a good movie and a bad movie? Attention?
How much you tend to it, how much it absorbs you.
Attention. Not the actor. Action movie, romantic comedy. The thing that you enjoy about a movie is that your attention is sucked into the story. And if you don't like the story, suddenly you become aware of yourself. And the seat's like too narrow, and the person in front of you keeps scratching their head, and the person behind you is chewing popcorn with their mouth open, and everything's like, I want the bathroom, right? You get this feeling when your attention is returned, it's not very comfortable. But if the movie is good, research shows that when you are watching a TV screen with something that you like, you are burning fewer calories than if you were in the same room doing nothing at all. Because we like that feeling. So, the quality of pain, by the way, of suffering, is it returns your attention to yourself. It gets very hard to get absorbed in things if you're in pain or if you're in suffering. So the mindfulness meditation that we're doing is to pick up and notice that quality when your attention has returned to yourself. When you become aware of yourself, you become aware of your own mind, you become aware of your own thoughts, you become aware of your own body. And there is a difference. Take thinking. There is a difference between being lost in your thinking and knowing that you are thinking. When you have that mindfulness, that awareness, you know that you are thinking. And you'll notice that one of the first insights, that your thinking suddenly becomes something that's uncomfortable. When you're absorbed in your thinking, it's very comfortable, you like it, even if it's unpleasant thinking. But when you have the mindfulness, when your attention is returned, you find this thinking starts to afflict you, it's uncomfortable. So for many people, when they start to meditate, they get this experience. My mind won't stop still, I want to breathe in, breathe out, my mind's thinking, and I want to know what's for dinner, I want to know what's on TV, I want to remember a conversation that somebody had with me 15 years ago, I want to think about my knee or my back, I want something to drink, I want to meditate in a different room, with a fly annoying me, just like anything, your mind just won't stop still, is the experience. And people, when they start meditating, they get this experience, and they feel that they can't do it, they're doing it wrongly. You're doing it right. What's changing is your, as I mentioned earlier, your attitude to every single experience is starting to change. This quality of awareness is there with every experience you can have, if you pay attention to it. We might say awareness of awareness. I might say awareness of yourself. I like to call it your mind coming home. I like to call it recollection. These are all different words. key Buddhist word is mindfulness. That mindfulness, that awareness of your awareness, is there behind every single experience that you can have. When you start to recognize it, pick it up, appreciate it, value it, and set forth that dedication to develop it, it will change your relationship to every single experience that you have. And so this is the key quality that we are using to bring the mind out of that constant absorption in experiencing and start to come back towards the enlightenment.